Hi, Lena. Carol here. Say, you expressed an interest in making sourdough bread, and so I thought I would make a few videos so that you would be able to access the information anytime you wanted to. We're going to work through in this video just the tools that I use and how I use them, and then we'll work through making the starter in the next video, and so on, until eventually we've got you up to speed in making nice loaves of bread. So in any case, let's begin with the starter. With the starter, it's a mixture of flour and water that has been allowed to develop a culture by getting yeast from the atmosphere, and then it begins to ferment and it causes the bubble that leavens the bread. Here is the starter that I use, and this is the one that you have in your house as well. I keep mine in a straight-sided glass jar. You can use glass or you can use food-safe plastic. The important part of it is that you don't want to have a lid that screws on tightly. You want to have something like, for example, this has a silicone gasket. You want to have something that will allow it to burp, because as this grows, it's going to need room to expand. In order to mix the starter, you're going to want to have water that has been boiled and cooled. And the reason that you want that is because the water has chlorine and some other chemicals and things in it that would be harsh, too harsh for the culture that you're trying to develop with the starter. Those chemicals are released when it's been boiled and allowed to cool down, and so you get nice plain water that's not harmful. In addition to that, you're going to want to use unbleached all-purpose flour. I particularly like this brand because it has a Velcro closure that really keeps it safe from getting bugs in it and doesn't cause a mess when you're using it. This one's a good brand. Any brand of all-purpose and unbleached flour is going to be what you want. When you're mixing the starter, you're going to want to use a scale. Now, eventually you're going to be able to do this by feel, by look and feel, but in the beginning you want to be very controlled in it so that you have success early on. You can develop your creativity a little bit later on, but in the beginning you're going to want to scale. Really, none of these pieces of equipment are very expensive and should be easy to find. In addition to that, when you're mixing the starter, I find this to be very, very handy. This is a jar spatula. Very handy for this size of a jar. It makes mixing it very easy. It makes cleaning up after it very easy as well. When you begin to mix the dough, sourdough, depending on the hydration of the dough that you use, can be quite sticky. You're going to want to have a scraper. The scraper is excellent at getting dough off your hands. I really never saw the value in these until I started to make sourdough. This is absolutely invaluable. In addition to this scraper, later on when you're forming the dough, you'll need a bench knife or a bench scraper. This is very handy, and you'll see this later on. When you are ready to put the bread or put the dough into your banneton or whatever form it is that you're going to use, you can use a bowl with a tea towel in it. You can use a banneton, but whatever it is that you use, you're going to want to use rice flour to coat the container. And the reason that you want to use the rice flour is because it does not absorb water very well, so it makes a nice barrier. If you use regular flour, the regular flour will become wet. Your dough will stick to the form, and you will ruin it getting it out, and you'll lose all of the leavening that you've put in there. The rice flour will allow it to pop out in one easy loaf, and it's wonderful for just that. This is not necessary, but I have found it very handy. This is supposed to be a tea ball, and you can use it for tea, but I also just reach in there and grab some flour and use it to sprinkle the flour. Very handy, easy to use. Excuse me. The bannetons need to stay covered. You can go through an awful lot of plastic wrap, or on Amazon, you can buy 100 disposable shower caps for probably $3. You use them over and over again. Not only are they easy to wash, but if they get dough on them, if you just allow it to dry, it'll pop off as well. But these will cover the banneton nicely. All right, moving on from that, once the bread has been formed, you're going to want to have parchment paper. And again, you can use the parchment paper over and over again. This one has probably made, I'm going to say 8 or 10 loaves of bread. To make the bread, and there's many, many containers, and if you want to go crazy, you can spend a lot of money on them, or for $30 or $35, you can get, this is a Dutch oven, that's what this is called, a cast iron Dutch oven. It is nice and heavy. It disperses the heat well over your loaf. It seals it well so that the moisture from your loaf will allow it to grow in the humid environment. And this particular Dutch oven is remarkable because it doesn't have a lid, or it doesn't have a handle on the lid on the top. The nice part about that is when you cook the bread, you actually cook it this way. So we put the bread into the Dutch oven like so, on the parchment paper. We put the lid on like this. After it has cooked for about an hour, when you take the lid off, the dough, or the bread is still in here, and it's able to get browned nicely all the way around. In any case, we'll talk more about these things as we progress through the videos. The next one is going to be about how to mix your starter, and then we'll go from there.